I was standing on the edge of the Brooklyn Bridge at 3 in the morning when she appeared beside me like some kind of guardian angel I didn't believe in anymore. The cold November wind cut through my jacket, and I remember thinking how fitting it was that even the weather wanted to push me toward the decision I'd been wrestling with for hours. My hands gripped the railing so tight my knuckles had gone white, and my mind was replaying every failure, every loss, every reason why the world would be better off without David Chen in it. I'd lost my job at the marketing firm 6 months ago, watched my fiancé walk out with half my stuff and all my dignity 3 months after that, and spent the last of my savings on whiskey and regret. My parents had immigrated from Taiwan with nothing but dreams for their son, and here I was, 32 years old, about to throw it all away because I couldn't figure out how to stop drowning in my own head. She didn't say anything at first, this stranger with auburn hair whipping around her face and eyes that somehow looked both tired and alive at the same time. She just stood there, maybe 10 feet away, staring out at the dark water like she understood exactly why I was there. Her presence annoyed me initially because I'd chosen this hour specifically to be alone, to make this choice without witnesses or intervention. But then she started humming something soft and sad, a melody I didn't recognize, and for reasons I couldn't explain, my grip on the railing loosened just a fraction. If you believe in second chances, in the power of human connection, and in the kindness of strangers who become something more, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this story if you know someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything, and it helps us keep sharing stories that matter. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and I didn't learn that until an hour later when we were sitting in a 24-hour diner on the Lower East Side, steam rising from 2 cups of coffee neither of us was drinking. She'd finally spoken on that bridge, not with platitudes or desperate pleas, but with a simple question that cut through everything. What's the thing you wish you could have done differently today? Not in your life, not with your career or relationships, just today. It was such a specific, manageable question that my brain actually engaged with it instead of spiraling. I told her I wished I'd called my mother back instead of letting it go to voicemail because I was too ashamed to admit I still hadn't found work. Sarah nodded like this was the most reasonable thing in the world and said her biggest regret of the day was yelling at a barista for getting her order wrong when the poor girl was clearly having her own terrible shift. We walked off that bridge, together, without discussing it, without acknowledging what had almost happened there. She just started walking, and I followed, and somehow we ended up at that diner where the fluorescent lights were too bright and the vinyl seats were cracked, but it felt safer than anywhere I'd been in months. Sarah told me she was a nurse at Mount Sinai, that she worked the overnight shift in the emergency room, and that she'd gotten off early because they were overstaffed for once. She'd gone to the bridge because she went there sometimes when she needed to think, when the weight of saving people who didn't always make it got too heavy. There was something about the honesty in her admission, the way she didn't pretend to have all the answers or act like she was some kind of savior, that made me start talking. Really talking, not the rehearsed explanations I'd given my few remaining friends or the defensive justifications I'd thrown at my ex. I told Sarah everything that night, or at least everything that mattered. How I'd built my entire identity around being successful, around making my parents proud, around being the guy who had it all figured out. How losing my job had felt like losing myself, and how my fiancé leaving had just confirmed what I already suspected. That without the impressive title and the nice apartment and the carefully constructed image, there was nothing worthwhile underneath. I told her about the panic attacks that left me gasping on my bathroom floor, about the days when getting out of bed felt like climbing Everest, about the crushing loneliness of realizing that most of my friendships had been built on professional networking rather than genuine connection. Sarah listened without interrupting, without offering solutions, and when I finally ran out of words, she told me her story. She'd lost her younger brother to suicide 4 years ago. He was 23, a college student with everything to live for on paper, and he jumped from a parking garage on a sunny Tuesday afternoon while Sarah was at work saving other people's family members. The guilt had nearly destroyed her, the what-ifs and if-onlys that played on an endless loop. She'd gone through her own dark period, questioning whether she was meant to be a nurse when she couldn't even see the signs in her own brother. But she'd found a therapist who specialized in survivor's guilt, joined a support group, and slowly, painfully slowly, learned that healing wasn't about forgetting or moving on, but about carrying the weight differently. She went to that bridge on her brother's birthday every year, and tonight was that night. The coincidence of it, the impossible timing, felt like something I would have dismissed as too convenient in a movie. But sitting there in that diner as dawn started breaking over the city, it felt like the universe or fate or whatever you wanted to call it had placed exactly the right person in exactly the right place. Sarah made me promise to do 3 things before we left that diner. First, call my mother and tell her the truth. Second, make an appointment with a therapist she recommended who had a sliding scale for payment. Third, meet her for coffee in a week to tell her how it went. No pressure, no judgment, just accountability from someone who understood the darkness because she'd lived in it too. That week was brutal in ways I wasn't prepared for. Calling my mother meant hearing her cry, meant facing her worry and love and the realization that my shame had kept me from the very people who would have helped me. The therapist appointment meant sitting in an office that smelled like lavender and admitting out loud that I'd been planning to end my life, that I needed help, that I couldn't do this alone anymore. But I showed up to meet Sarah 7 days later, and the relief on her face when she saw me walk through that coffee shop door was the first time in months I felt like my existence mattered to someone. Coffee became a weekly thing, then twice weekly, then almost daily. Sarah had this way of checking in that never felt invasive, of asking how I was doing that demanded honesty instead of accepting the automatic fine most people wanted to hear. She dragged me to a hiking trail in Harriman State Park one Saturday, insisting that exercise and nature were part of healing, even though I complained the entire drive there. We climbed this moderate trail, and when we reached a viewpoint overlooking a lake surrounded by fall colors, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a year, actual peace, even if just for a moment. Sarah stood beside me, not saying anything profound, just being present, and I realized that maybe healing wasn't about grand gestures or sudden revelations. Maybe it was about these small moments, these tiny shifts in perspective that accumulated over time. Through Sarah, I started rebuilding, not the old version of myself that had been so dependent on external validation, but something different, something more authentic. I took a part-time job at a bookstore in Park Slope. Nothing glamorous, but it paid some bills and got me out of my apartment. I started attending a men's support group the therapist recommended, sitting in a circle with other guys who were struggling with depression, anxiety, job loss, divorce, all the things I'd thought made me uniquely broken. I reconnected with my parents, having real conversations instead of performance reviews of my life. And through it all, Sarah was there, not as a crutch, but as a companion on the journey. I fell in love with her slowly, then all at once, the way you fall asleep, according to that Hemingway quote everyone loves. It was in the way she laughed at terrible jokes in the bookstore's humor section when she'd visit me at work, the way she called me out when I was being too hard on myself, the way she shared her own bad days instead of pretending to have it all together. I was terrified to tell her because our friendship had literally saved my life, and I couldn't bear to lose her. But one night, sitting on the same bridge where we'd met, this time in spring with the city lights reflecting off the water, I finally found the courage. I told her that she'd found me when I was broken and somehow helped me heal, that I didn't know if I believed in soulmates or fate, but I knew that meeting her had changed everything. I told her I loved her and that it was okay if she didn't feel the same way, that her friendship alone was more than I deserved. Sarah looked at me with those eyes that had seen so much pain and somehow still held hope, and she kissed me. Not a gentle, tentative kiss, but one full of all the things we'd both been too scared to say. She told me she'd been falling for me for months but didn't want to complicate my healing process, didn't want me to feel obligated or confused. She said that watching me fight to rebuild yourself had been the most beautiful thing she'd witnessed, and that I'd helped heal parts of her she didn't even know were still broken. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even in our darkest moments we're not alone, please like this video and leave a comment. Tell us about a time someone showed up for you when you needed it most, or share this with someone who might need to hear it today. We've been together for 2 years now, and I won't lie and say everything is perfect or that I never have bad days. Depression doesn't just disappear because you fall in love or find purpose. But I've learned to manage it, to reach out instead of isolating, to be honest about my struggles instead of hiding them behind a facade of success. I went back to school for counseling because I want to help others the way Sarah and my therapist helped me. My parents came to my graduation last month, and my mom cried happy tears for the first time in years. Sarah was there too, wearing the smile that first gave me hope on a dark bridge that I now see as not the end of my story but the beginning of the most important chapter. Before we end, take a moment and comment below with one thing you're grateful for today, no matter how small. Sometimes acknowledging the good helps us through the hard. I think about that night often, about how close I came to missing all of this. The love, the healing, the second chance at building a life worth living. I think about the impossible timing of Sarah being on that bridge, and while I still don't know if I believe in divine intervention, I believe in human connection. I believe in the power of showing up for each other, of being honest about our struggles, of extending grace to ourselves and others. Sarah found me when I was broken, yes, but the truth is we found each other. Two people carrying heavy things who learned to help each other carry the weight. And that, more than any fairy tale ending, is what saved us both.